no man is poor if he has friends. And then there's another phrase, nobody's born to be a failure.
So after the George C. Scott obituary video, a friend at work made a joke that I should make that a recurring segment on the channel. And I said that I probably would only make it a recurring segment on the channel if I could find more obituaries like that written by Stephen Hunter. Yep, that's right. We're going to talk about Jimmy Stewart today. Now, Jimmy Stewart, if you are unfamiliar, was a star of many Alfred Hitchcock films, but also many other films, such as Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and of course the beloved It's a Wonderful Life. The image around Jimmy Stewart was one of everyman, but also very shy. Let's get to the obituary. So here's some obituaries from the day that Jimmy Stewart died. One from the New York Times. James Stewart, the hesitant hero, dies at 89. James Stewart, whose movie portrayals of decent, idealistic, and naive small-town Americans made him a beloved national icon, died yesterday at his home in Beverly Hills, California. The Stewart way of speaking, laconic, with a hesitant nasal drawl, is instantly recognizable by virtually every American.
What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Barry.
And then, yes, does discuss the fact that later in his career, he did start to play slightly more intense roles. Alfred Hitchcock used him against type in such films as Rope and The Man Who Knew Too Much, and especially as a voyeur photographer in Rear Window. I would argue that he is still pretty Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window. And as a retired detective entranced by two forms of a mythic Kim Novak in Vertigo. And then Washington Post, where our friend Stephen Hunter is the film critic, had a obituary the day that Jimmy Stewart died, written by Bart Barnes. So our man, Mr. Hunter, was not selected to write the obituary for Jimmy Stewart. Pretty similar stuff to what you saw in the New York Times. In fact, this is probably one they had handy to post the day that he died. Okay, so you got the basic idea. Jimmy Stewart, everyone loves him. American icon. Kind, sweet, gentle, loving, sometimes a little bit off type, but not the usual, otherwise it wouldn't be off type. Now let's find out what our friend Stephen Hunter has to say. Now note that this was written 3 days after Jimmy Stewart died, so clearly Stephen Hunter must have not been available or something and saw the reporting on Jimmy Stewart's death and decided that he needed to do something about it. Something had to be said. Stewart, never afraid of the dark. Already, we're off to a great start here. Jimmy Stewart exemplifies a principle unacknowledged in our culture of late. It's possible, his life quietly argues, to be a movie star, a general, a pilot, a Republican, a millionaire, and still a great artist. I didn't know those things were mutually exclusive, but okay. That on the event of his death Wednesday, he was seen on too many TV shows as beloved instead of brilliant is a considerable injustice. It reduces what should not be reduced. Again, also mutually exclusive that you can be both brilliant and beloved. He was not George Bailey of It's a Wonderful Life. He was smarter, tougher, considerably more gifted. Damn, somebody doesn't like George Bailey, but okay. He was not Elwood P. Dowd of Harvey. He was more incisive, wholly ungrounded in delusion.
In this world, Elwood, you must be oh so smart, or oh so pleasant. Well, for years I was smart. I recommend pleasant.
He was not the Mr. Smith who went to Washington, the naive, shuffling country boy of the aw shucks demeanor, the shy glance, the unthreatening stutter. He was all of them and more. An actor of considerable depth, passion, complexity, and facility, and Stephen Hunter loves adjectives and adverbs and loves to use as many of them as in a single sentence as he can. He contained multitudes, but in a way that's too easy to forget. He presents a more subtle tradition of acting that many critics are impatient with and tend to undervalue. Okay, well, we gotta pause already. We gotta go see. Alright, let's see here. We've got highest rated film 100% on Rotten and lowest rated 20%. 100. Oh, somebody didn't like Rear Window. Not anything that I didn't expect to see. Jimmy Stewart is one of the most beloved actors of all time for a reason. His movies are good. So where were we? He was an auteur actor who managed to stamp his personality on every role he played and combine himself, his own past, and his gift with the characters he played, and thereby occupy them so totally that the line between performing and being seemed no longer to exist. This is a purely The British actors, more revered in some sectors, are far more technical. They have studied, they have practice, they know tricks, they have mastered breath discipline, eyebrow angle and pupil dilation, stage body language. They understand lighting, and will rip the bloody hell out of the poor guy who gives them a number 4 bulb when they need a number 3. This is not to reduce them to more magicians of body, face, and voice, but to point up a difference. With their foundation of technique, when they bring those skills to the screen, they tend to create glorious artifices, confabulations, whose very confabulation-ness is part of the pleasure. Okay, so British actors, big, bombastic, bad. American actors, stoic, strong, firm, good. Alright, so we spent 2 paragraphs now talking about how much better American actors are than British actors. Let's get back to Jimmy Stewart. When you see, say, Laurence Olivier's brilliant Hamlet or Kenneth Branagh as Henry V, you are seeing greatness, but it is irrevocably linked to the text. You never forget the actor behind the costume and the well-practiced tongue that never trips over those brilliant 5-footed lines. So, 1, we're still talking about British actors, and 2, apparently, Stephen Hunter doesn't like Shakespeare. It's fine. I don't always like Shakespeare. I value interesting new interpretations of Shakespeare, usually in order to really enjoy watching his plays at this point in my life. So yeah, I get it. That's 3 paragraphs about how much you don't like British actors, or really how much you don't like Shakespeare, but let's get back to Jimmy Stewart. The Americans, particularly the first few generations of actors in sound film, came to their craft differently. They didn't know Coriolanus from Timothy of Athens. This is one of my least favorite, I don't want to get political here, but I can't help it. Stephen Hunter is starting it, okay? There's this idea of, like, smart, bad, down-home, grown American good, and that's all I'm reading here. Anyway, but, like, it's like, you don't like Shakespeare! Okay, so we've spent 4 paragraphs now talking about how American actors good, British actors bad because Shakespeare. Now we can go back to Jimmy Stewart, right? In fact, one of their distinguishing features was that they all seemed to be somewhat embarrassed by acting, as if it was somehow not men's work. Oh my god, now he's being a misogynist again. That gave them an enormous pool of masculine reserve, which the camera in some way felt and captured. There was a tension at the heart of the great male stars this country produced from the mid-30s to the mid-50s, with Stewart merely the prime example.
Oh, you're following me. Oh, I didn't know that.
But the same thing existed in John Wayne, Spencer Tracy, Humphrey Bogart, and Stewart's great friend, Henry Fonda. Alright, we've brought it back around to Jimmy Stewart. I would argue the opposite about Jimmy Stewart. I mean, he didn't come away looking masculine to me because of his shy nature. He came away looking vulnerable and approachable. There's many roles in his films where a female protagonist is encouraging him to do whatever it is that needs to be done.
If you want to throw so much, let's go outside before you wreck the shed.
Oh, no, honey, I don't.
Too much rich living. A little exercise isn't going to hurt you. Come on, let's throw a few.
In fact, I think in many Jimmy Stewart roles, the female leads are almost more dominant in their performances because Jimmy Stewart's good-natured, nervous sensibilities, and because of that, you get vulnerable performance from Jimmy Stewart.
Mind if I have some of that beer?
Besides, I resent what you said about your brain. I think it's beautiful.
You do, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye, Jeff.
Well, you mean good night.
I mean what I said.
Well, Lisa.
Snob.
What do you mean, snob?
You're the worst kind there is, an intellectual snob.
What are you, a man or a mouse?
A mouse.
To someone like Stephen Hunter, vulnerability is very not masculine. But also some of the people that he mentions, like...
Sam, I thought I told you never to play.
Not Humphrey Bogart getting completely shattered to pieces over a song. Surely not. Maybe Stephen Hunter's never seen Casablanca. I don't know if you've ever seen Casablanca, but let me assure you, Rick is vulnerable and sad and depressed and in love the entire film. Okay, so that's 5 paragraphs now about acting. In their best performances, they moved beyond imitation into being. They obliterated the text, made it go away. This narrowed their range considerably, but it may have deepened their emotional impact and conviction. They looked good with guns, in hats, on horses, behind the wheel, out of doors. Why so many lists, Stephen? Who Who wanted to see them frozen in the number 4 filter in sandals, tights, and some foppish little tutu, trying desperately to remember whether it was a tu brute or a te it tu et brute? I don't even know now what he means by this. Does he mean all American actors are not good in period pieces? Or does he just mean ones that were in westerns? Oh, thank God we're back. We're back to Jimmy Stewart. It took 6 paragraphs, but we're back. Jimmy Stewart, son of a hardware store owner, was trained in men's work and fully with a degree in architecture from Princeton in 1932. He just drifted onto Broadway, and then by 1935, 3 years out of school to Hollywood. So, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Doesn't that suggest that Jimmy Stewart's background is theatrical? It was pretty easy, and raised on stern, small-town values of hard work and endless application, he must have been embarrassed by that, too. God, I just love that you're putting words in Jimmy Stewart's mouth there. Oh, he must be made of sterner stuff, because he's an American boy who was raised to be a hardware store owner or an architect, so he must be embarrassed by how easily he became a great actor. Must be. His was a people's face, an expressively American face, a face unclouded, freed of its narcissism. Oh my God, have you ever looked at Humphrey Bogart or Jimmy Cagney? What are you talking about? You could see him shaving, but never pomading his hair. You don't think that Humphrey Bogart put pomade in his hair? Are you kidding me right now? You're just talking about John Wayne. You're just talking about John Wayne over and over and over again. You're just talking about John Wayne.
Stop it. Get some help.
But even as he was one with the actors of his generation, he was also different. He had much more courage than most of them did, but the artistic courage to play against his persona and reveal aspects of his character that went against the beloved image. John Wayne got close in Red River and The Searchers, but never surrendered macho stature, as Stewart was willing to do in It's a Wonderful Life and Alfred Hitchcock's great Vertigo. What macho stature did Jimmy Stewart have to begin with that being willing to do It's a Wonderful Life? I don't understand. Is it a comparison? Is he doing a dichotomy? He could be in It's a Wonderful Life or Vertigo. Maybe that's what it is. That makes sense. I kind of hurt myself earlier when I punched myself in the chest. The first has entered legend on the basis of its adoration of small-town values and its endorsement of family and friendship over material greed. But it's a far more sophisticated film in reality than it is in memory. It's not very warm-hearted at all. It's really about the dark and usually untouched mental state of self-hatred unto suicide. And Stewart, far from being a lovable feller, is really close to a monster. It simply won't work dramatically otherwise. That's what gives the arc of redemption its meaning. His question is, why me? And his response is human, not heroic. It's not my fault. It's his fault. The his, in this case, is his mildly mentally handicapped Uncle Billy, played by Thomas Mitchell. Okay. First of all, that's not what It's a Wonderful Life is about. It's a Wonderful Life is about a life unrealized and being content with what life does give you. It's okay to want more.
Now you listen to me. I don't want any plastics. I don't want any ground floors. And I don't want to get married ever to anyone. You understand that? I want to do what I want to do. And you're...
But it's also okay to be okay. That's what It's a Wonderful Life is about, and the reason why It's a Wonderful Life is still so powerful and still rings so true today is because we are always going to feel that in our lives. That is never going to be a feeling that goes away. We are always going to want more and never get it. We may not always be honest to ourselves about it, but everybody has dreams and ambitions. And sometimes there are people who don't get them, and it affects them in an outward way. And then yes, you get to the suicidal George Bailey when everything starts falling apart. But we get there because he is human, not because he's a schlump, not because he's a victim, but because he cannot find it within himself to be happy. He wanted so much more, and that's the sadness of the film, is that he had so much, but it wasn't enough. And that's where the payoff of the movie comes from.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town.
Hitchcock, as many have pointed out, also saw the darkness in the middle-aged Stewart, and in Vertigo, the two collaborated on another extraordinary voyage to the far side. It's fine to have Stewart play an obsessed man. He brought similar psychological intensity to the Anthony Mann westerns. But there's a point at which Scotty goes beyond obsession into utter creepdom. In fact, viewed from another perspective, he could easily be the villain, not the hero of the story. He's easily as nuts as Anthony Perkins' Norman Bates in Psycho. His control over Kim Novak's character Judy is truly terrifying. He becomes a twisted exaggeration of one of his true selves, the bomber pilot whose mastery of the vehicle and command over its crew must be terrifyingly absolute. I can't recall a star of such genial positive image who allowed himself to be portrayed so viciously and so perverted his image, and who got away with it. When he appeared on talk shows in the 60s and 70s, Stewart took to playing a much simpler version of his first movie self. The beloved, avuncular, slightly phasic? Oh, probably aphasia. Yeah, he doesn't know his words. Small town gentleman. He almost became Uncle Billy, in fact. Not meaning or... Steven, the person that you see in the interviews is Jimmy Stewart. The other stuff is acting. This is who he is. I'm sorry that he's not John Wayne, and that you want him to be, but like very few actors of his generation, he could take you to a dark place and turn your sweat cold and your breath harsh. There's a name for that. It's genius. 6 paragraphs setting up that American actors are good, British actors are bad, and then that's why Jimmy Stewart is great, and that no other actor of his time was able to do bad and good the same. I think Stephen Hunter's only seen John Wayne movies. I got a lot of takes. I don't think he's ever seen a single movie that George C. Scott starred in. I don't think he's seen It's a Wonderful Life, and I don't think he's ever seen a Humphrey Bogart movie. There's a movie that Humphrey Bogart is in that he just goes straight up like horrifying. It's not a horror movie, but it feels like one. I think you could compare In a Lonely Place to Vertigo. Yep, people have definitely compared them. There's no excuse not to have known about In a Lonely Place. Not that he had to compare Humphrey Bogart and Jimmy Stewart's careers. I'm just saying. Well, anyway, I don't know. I could go on. I mean, we could look at Jimmy Stewart interviews like we did with George C. Scott, but it's gonna just show you what you already know, that Jimmy Stewart is adorable. One of my favorite things about doing this is that I've rediscovered that Johnny Carson is hilarious.
Raw.
Good. Well, that wasn't too tough, was it? No wonder you lost the game for that kind of a cheer.
We would do one locomotive. Hip.
Oh, they put that down.
Raw. Tiger, sis, boom, bop. Princeton.
Damien Princetonian was right. You are to blame for that. Defeat.
I gotta watch the rest of that later. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if I can cover any more obituaries by Stephen Hunter. They're so bad. But we maybe don't have to just cover obituaries, because we might be able to just cover his hot takes. We've got a horrific review of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, an absolutely awful review of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which not one of my favorite films, but still, I also see that Vulture, not a fan of Stephen Hunter either. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research into this and come back at y'all later when I need another quick video to make. That's all I got for today. Like, Stephen Hunter's bad and he should feel bad, okay? I don't like the guy. I think he's a racist. I think he's a misogynist. I think he's an ableist. I think that he's a jingoist. Can I do one of the Stephen Hunter's list? Let me try. Pulitzer Prize winner Stephen Hunter. Misogynist, chauvinist, racist, ableist, jingoist, xenophobic, American icon of literature that he wrote when writing things that got turned into movies. All right, I think that's good. That's good.
Maybe a real hero's the last one to hear about it.
But you pulled me out of a gutter, and for that I owe you some thanks. Just remember, Fievel, one man's sunset is another man's dawn. I don't know what's out there beyond those hills, but if you ride yonder, head up, eyes steady, heart open, I think one day you'll find that you're the hero you've been looking for.
His Bourne review is a gimmicky curiosity, a florid attempt to make sense of a film that Hunter seemingly isn't equipped with the critical capabilities to process. Alright, Vulture. We gotta talk. We gotta come back to this.